welcome back to the show. I am so excited to get to sit down and talk to you again.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thrilled to be here.
This is so fun. We had you on episode 9. Can you believe that? Hundreds of episodes ago. And I think in that was the first time we had ever chatted about, well, period. And you had made such an impact on my life that I think I asked you one question about maybe 7 different books because I was just so excited to talk to you. I was a horrible interviewer at that point in time, and I hope I've gotten better since then.
I don't remember it that way at all, Rebecca. And obviously, you can't be too bad when you're hundreds of podcasts later. So,
well, we had that conversation, and then on episode 130, we got to talk about when to walk away, which was one of my favorite conversations. I love that so much. And so for listeners who are new to Radical Radiance, episode 9 and episode 130, if you want some more conversations with Gary, you can check those out. I'm excited about the book that we get to talk about today, your new book, Making Your Marriage a Fortress. Before we get to that, though, you and I have both moved since we've talked.
Yes.
So we've both moved to the mountains, just different mountains. You're in Colorado, right?
Yes.
Okay, we just moved home to East Tennessee.
Oh, wonderful.
So,
I love Tennessee.
It's the best. Yeah. So all of our friends are here. My family's here. My husband's pastoring not new, but new to us church here. And so, yeah, we're like 3 weeks in. This is my makeshift office here. I do not have my office set up yet. And so anyway, we're just still in the middle of a move, but we're super thankful. It's been really fun. I thought about you when I was preparing for this because we always talk running.
Yes.
There has been one day since I got back that I haven't ran.
Wow.
And I don't know about you. I just love being in a place that is just such an active community. Mm-hmm. It has just been so life-giving to me. So have you found that in Colorado?
Oh, well, one, we love being around the mountains again. You know, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. I could see Mount Rainier. Well, the dirty little secret is you can only see Mount Rainier from Seattle about 70 days a year because of the clouds. Yeah. But when you can see it, it's beautiful. Here, it's almost every day. We bought a house that's on perfect running trails that go on for miles and miles and miles because they connect. But can't move in yet. It's a huge reno job. I mean, we just gutted the house. So we rented, and my wife is to thank for all of this, just about a mile from Washington Park, just south of Denver. Anybody around the Denver area has heard of Washington Park. And like first 3 weeks we were there, we were probably virtually every day running or walking. It's just a beautiful trail and whatnot. And now I've also started getting into biking. And was just along the Platte River this morning and really enjoying that. But yeah, we're the same there. There's nothing like getting outside, getting the heart rate going, being in nature for me. And in Houston, it was a little harder to be in nature. There was Memorial Park, which was okay if you looked right. If you looked left, you were in the street. So really, really looking forward to it and just love it. The weather here is unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, I didn't like the thought of going to a place that's cold, especially coming from Texas. But everybody, what they said is right. When the sun is out, it's not cold. So it's amazing what difference the sun makes.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing I love about the weather in East Tennessee is there are 4 seasons, 4 very clear seasons, and they're all gorgeous in their own right.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And fall is my favorite here.
Me
just
too.
Seeing the leaves. We're about 30 minutes from the Smokies. And so even just being kind of in the foothills of the Smokies, you just have beauty all around you. And so the leaves are starting to turn this week. Yeah. On my run this morning, it was the first couple of days where I noticed there's piles of leaves starting to form. And so it's just my favorite time of year. It's the best.
I was a fall fanatic. And the toughest thing about being in Houston is the leaves started to turn early December.
Yeah. And Mississippi is the same way. That's where we were. Yeah.
It's not the same when you have Christmas lights competing with yellow leaves. It just doesn't feel right. It messes with your brain. So we're really looking forward to that here this season.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, I was excited to catch up about that because I knew we've both flipped our lives upside down since we've talked. So fun. Speaking of, you just released a new book called Making Your Marriage a Fortress, this book just comes at such a great time for us and I think the world at large, because we've all been through so much in the last several years. And as I was reading just kind of the back cover copy, I just loved how this is such an almost offensive approach to protecting our marriages, right? Yes. And so I would love for you to just talk about the importance you see in that approach as opposed to sometimes how we approach our marriage in more of a defensive, reactive mode. I'd love to just start there.
Yeah. Well, I think it just begins with the admission that this world isn't kind to marriages.
Yeah.
With the best of intentions. Yeah, we can have a great weekend together and then there'll be an issue with the kid, or you've got the dog, so the dog has diarrhea all over the house, or you get a headache, or there's financial challenges, or your husband's in the church business, and I've seen some pastors really treated unfairly, or attacked. And so it's just recognizing this world isn't kind to marriages, and I want couples to make an idea, sort of a pact. You know what? Whatever we face, whether it's within or without, we want to come out of this closer. We want to go through these trials and end up tighter as a union. Because I think since the world isn't kind, if we're not intentional or offensive, as you put it, in going forward, we're just going to naturally drift apart. Other things are going to compete for our attention. And what's really chilling, it's sort of like weight gain. When I first moved from the Pacific Northwest to Houston, and it's so much hotter, and I wasn't tempted by foods in Seattle. I mean, it's salad and sushi and seafood, and that's not a big deal for me. Then I moved to Houston, and the worst ones for me, Tex-Mex, steaks,
Texas
barbecue.
Food is so good.
It is, but not when you're trying to stay in shape. And so I wasn't gaining a lot, maybe a quarter pound a week. Doesn't sound like much, but that's a pound a month, which is 12 pounds a year. A couple of years, all of a sudden it's like, what happened? Well, nothing just happened. It was that slow progression. And I've seen that with couples. You get used to a little bit of distance and we'll catch up, and then it becomes a little more distant, but it doesn't seem as much because you already had some, and it becomes more and more and more until eventually, man, I don't even know you. Or what I hear, well, I still love him, I'm just not in love with him anymore. And so it's just like, these things are predictable, and being committed to not letting it happen. And these couples in these books I just felt so fortunate to get to learn from them and listen to them. I think of Randy and Hannah were one couple where they said that they have a really strong marriage, and everybody says, oh, you guys are so lucky how you found each other, you're such a good match. And they insist it has nothing to do with luck, and has nothing to do with being a good match. We work really hard. They have 3 different check-ins every week where they talk about it. I mean, it's not something that they found or stumbled into. It really was something that they've chosen. We're going to make this a priority. I loved what they said. We're not going to get divorced. We know that. So we could either be a little bit miserable or really happy. We decided let's put in the work to be really happy.
Yeah.
And so then I kind of use some of the research from Dr. Archibald Hart and Dr. Sharon May. It's fun. It's father-daughter team. Psychiatrists wrote the book together. And they talk about emotional connection. And what I love about it is that it's something that you can apply. The 3 things I said are so key for couples to build and maintain emotional connection. The first one is trust. And it's not just, you're not going to cheat on me or betray me. It's, if you say you're going to pick up milk tonight on your way home, pick up the milk or the soy milk or what, you're going to get the coffee. Just, it's hard to build intimacy if you're suspicious of your partner, if you can't trust your partner, if they've broken that trust. So that's something about, I want to build intimacy, so I've got to be a person who can trust. The second thing is emotional availability. And for me, it's being too busy, having too much there, being too filled with myself. I'm not emotionally available to my wife. I'm too tired. I'm not giving her the best hours of the day. And the third one they say is sensitive responsiveness. Now, for me as a guy, I don't mean to get too gender-based here, but that often means I'm not trying to fix it. I'm not trying to discount what my wife is saying. I'm trying to say, oh, of course you were frustrated, or yeah, it must have been awful, or I get that. It's being very responsive and very sensitive in my response when she's sharing it. And so those are things that you can apply and focus on and build to make your relationship something that doesn't begin to drift, because everybody was warning that drift is subtle. You get used to it, and then it gets a little bit worse, and it gets a little bit worse. And if you let it get too far, that's when couples enter crisis.
Yeah. I love that you talk to different couples throughout the book, and you use that to sort of help you in that. And I'm wondering, as people are thinking about grabbing the book, what are some of those, and we could probably guess, but what are some of the major life trials that you most often see couples face that really challenge or begin to cause that drift to happen a lot of times? I'd love to just sort of walk through those. Yeah.
Some of them are terrifying and some of them are blessings. One of the blessings is just having kids. I love a quote from Dr. Les Parrott: when a new baby is born, a new marriage is born. Now, I know you and your husband aren't in that stage yet, but it really does completely transform the relationship. And so how do we still stay connected? That our goal in life isn't just to raise a successful child, however we define successful, but that we come out of this 18 years from now, we're closer because we had a child, not further apart. There's another couple where, and this was just heartbreaking, she came from a very dysfunctional family, and she fell in love with a man who's very strong. I mean, he was like NFL lineman kind of strong, the kind of weight that he would lift. She liked the security. She liked the safety of a strong guy. And then he's diagnosed with MS 3 years into their marriage. That was 3 decades ago. And so for most of their marriage, he hasn't been able to carry in the groceries. Right now, he lives in a scooter. You know, he went into the walker and then a wheelchair and then a scooter and whatnot. And how did they get through that, and the lessons they learned that life isn't fair, but how did they learn to thrive as a couple? They have one of the most intimate marriages I've known because of that. One couple lost their only child. They had a real difficult time conceiving children. And so their son got a lot of attention, and he died tragically right before his 20th birthday. And the wife told me that she grabbed the lapels of one of her closest friends the morning she found out her son had died. And she goes, look, I know the statistics, 70% of couples won't make it through this. I've lost my son. Please help me not to lose my husband. I don't want to, lose all of my family in one fell swoop. The financial challenges that couples face. When one couple woke up and they finally realized we owe more than we earn in a year. What are we going to do? How do we get out of this? There were a number of ones, a child getting cancer and what that does to a marriage. It comes from so many different areas. It was just amazing to me how I wouldn't want to face any one of these issues that these couples faced. And so it was just, tell me what you did wrong, because they could all admit, boy, at first this was not the helpful response. This was not helpful. Then what did you learn? And then what would you say to couples that are facing that situation now or may face it and they don't even realize it?
Yeah, that's so good. Another challenge that I know you talk about, that I know you've experienced as a speaker, as a pastor that travels and speaks and things like that, is where one spouse travels for their job, right?
Yes.
And that's a reality that a lot of people experience. What's some advice that you would give a couple who finds themselves in that type of situation to be proactive?
One of the couples I talked to is a Marine, and he's a chaplain, and so he can be gone for weeks at a time and out in the field where it's difficult to connect. And it was just so helpful because as a chaplain, he's also helping military couples learn to do this. So whether you're traveling for business or military or long deployments or not, some of the things that were really fascinating to me is he talked about how, one, it wasn't an on-the-field deployment, it was training. So he was with other chaplains, and they were having a great time there in San Diego or something. It's like 3 or 4 weeknights in a row, he was going out with his buddies, and they're having a good time. And his wife, Christina, said, hey, we're not connecting. I'm not hearing from you at all. What's going on? And he realized, he goes, I would never go out 3 or 4 nights a row if I was at home and not think about Christina. And he goes, so how can I reorganize my schedule? Just because I'm on the road doesn't mean I'm not married. I'm still as married on the road as I am when I'm at home. And so it was a good lesson for him to realize I still need to live as a married man. One of the things that they strongly recommend is that a lot of times you're tired when you're on the road. So they said, give an intense 10 rather than a lethargic 20. And by that means, if you can only talk for 10 minutes, make it really good. But don't be looking at Facebook. Don't be watching Sports Center behind. Your wife can tell. That's why I think FaceTime can be really good sometimes, because you're going to be caught if you're doing some of that. But they said, just give the best. And he can have some scary moments. And so he found sometimes to conserve his energy, they would use high-low. What was the high point of your day? What was the low point of your day? Because it would allow them to sort of get there. And then this is what I didn't do well, Rebecca, when I traveled a lot when I was younger. I didn't voice my expectations. And so here's a classic case. When Barron came home, he really liked the house to be clean. He was in the military. They really stress cleanliness. But as Christina would say, well, fine, but I've got a couple kids and you're not here. Good luck. And so they figured out, we'll pay when I'm gone for somebody to clean the house, because it wasn't a fair expectation for Christina to do it, but he wanted it. For me, it was exactly the opposite. And this is why this is really just about helping couples talk through these issues. When I came home and I was tired, what I craved was peace and quiet. Lisa imagined if I came home from a trip, I'd want the house to be clean. So she would be running around and she'd be doing the vacuum cleaner. It wasn't quite done because she's thinking, I'm showing him my love. Wow, I'm vacuuming the floor.
You could care less if the house is vacuumed.
Now, I don't notice crumbs on the counter. I don't notice if the floor is vacuumed. I just want peace and chill and quiet, reconnect with the kids, reconnect with her. But I didn't voice that to her. I just was like, well, I know this is her way of showing love. And he really talked about when this is a way of life, you need to talk about it and talk about it some more. And then what they really found that was helpful, and this is for longer deployments, he found that if they're going to reconnect, let's do it without the kids. One, he would be thinking about sex. He's a young soldier. It's been a long time. And he just, but for Christina, it was also, you know what? The kids are all over him and they're emotionally connecting. And so by the time we get the kids to bed, he just is tired and he doesn't have a lot for me. And so then they just did one night, the first deployment. The second deployment, they did 2 or 3 nights. They said, look, we went out to a play, we went out to eat. And we could have romantic time in the hotel or whatnot, but they were able just to reconnect as a married couple and then return to the kids. And then he could focus on the kids. And I thought that was a brilliant idea, that they're prioritizing their marriage and making the most of it count.
Oh, I love that so much. That's so good. And, I'm thinking too, sometimes it's not travel. For a lot of people, I think it is a really busy schedule that can really threaten to tear you apart, right? And so what advice would you give to a couple who finds themselves just in a busy season that doesn't seem to end?
Yeah. This is going to sound so cliche, but I'm going to say it anyway because I still think it's true. You've got to decide if your marriage is going to be the priority. Yeah. I think of a woman who, she was head of the IT at her business and all the computers crashed and everybody's screaming, we can't get our work done if you don't get the system back up again. It might have been a hack or something, but it was a long thing. And so she was working evenings and bringing work home, and she was working weekends and whatnot. And what happens is that eventually you just start, your spouse says, well, don't I matter at all? Now, if I was talking to her spouse, I would say, hey, dude, resent the situation, not your wife. Everybody's screaming at her. This is what she wants to do. If it's just a one-time occurrence, I think you give your spouse leeway and say, hey, this is a season. It's going to happen. But there comes a time when you realize this isn't a season anymore. You're intentionally more concerned about excelling as an IT manager than you are as a spouse. a couple from the book that I talked to was a husband who was a pastor. You can relate to this in your family. When COVID hit, he didn't go to seminary. He didn't have a seminary class on what do you do when you go online. And this was in Canada. He had 3 days, all right? Nobody goes to church this Sunday. So he's engaged. And his wife, Hannah, said, you know what, most couples had too much time at home. My husband worked twice as much during COVID as he did afterwards. And for a while it was okay, but then it became the pattern where she said, this isn't okay. Is it worth it for you as a pastor to excel online and then at home having real issues? So they have no less than 3 check-ins. And check-ins was something Lisa and I haven't really done, but a lot of the couples in this book found them so helpful. For Randy and Hannah, when they faced that busy time, they felt like they needed 3. One, they needed a date night. They needed a night where it was just about fun. They wouldn't talk about the kids. They're not talking about business. When we're getting to the yard mode, what about the mortgage? What about these bills? They found like we just need that night to have fun, which meant the second meeting, they had to have a weekly business meeting, or the date night would be challenged by the business meeting. And that's where they would say, who's got these bills? What are we going to do? Who's going to pick up the kids this week? And then there was an every morning check-in. They really are I call them a relationally industrious couple. They value being connected. And what he found, though, is that while his wife really wants to check in the morning, so she just feels like she knows what's going on throughout the day, she does it much better when she's fully caffeinated. So he makes her a cup of coffee,
that.
leaves her alone in the library for 15 minutes, comes back in, and then it could just be 5 or 10 minutes. It's not a lot. But that's the couple where I said before, everybody says, oh, you're so lucky you have such a great match. I said, no, it's not about the match. We work really hard. And they take turns planning the date night. One night she was frustrated with him because he wasn't helping to get the kids ready for bed, but he had put all of these candles out in the garage, and he'd had these big canvases up for a splatter paint night, right? And he was afraid he was going to burn down the garage because it was taking so long to get the kids into bed and whatnot. But they still decided we're going to make this happen. It would have been so easy to say, look, it's 9:30. We've lost it. The evening's over. And they decided, you know what, we're going to do what we can. And I guess, am I going on too long? Can I make one more point on this?
No, okay. This is great.
What amazed me about this couple is, again, because it's easy, I think for Lisa, sometimes we just give in. Well, we were going to do that, but the day just didn't work out. We'll just let it go. They were going to have their date night regardless. It was one of the best date nights they ever had. And then I talked to the couple with the husband having MS. This has changed my life. It's changed my marriage. I was blown away at their faith. But he talked about how every night he's got this routine where he can get his scooter to the bed, and with his arms he can get part of his body on, but he needs his wife to move his legs over. And part of him thinks, why do I bother? I'll just let her do everything. It doesn't. And he says, but Gary, I've been convinced before the Lord that, he said, maybe I can only do 20% physically of what I used to be able to do, but I'm going to do 100% of that 20%.
Oh, wow.
Whatever we can do. And so instead of being resentful, he says, I'm going to do everything I can. And so I used that when I was talking with a husband who had prostate cancer, had a prostate removed, and sex became a real tricky thing for them as a couple. Yeah. And there were some things that couldn't happen right away and maybe never. And it's so easy for a couple to say, well, okay, forget it. We'll just put it away. But what do they say? Okay, we can maybe only do 40% of what we used to do, but let's do 100% of that 40%. Whatever life gives us, we're going to make the most of it. And the couples that survived and thrived, that was their attitude. Even the couple that lost their son, they're so involved in their son's friends' lives and whatnot. It's just amazing to me how a huge difference was deciding a lot's been taken away, but not everything has been taken away. So we're going to do everything that we can instead of being bitter and disappointed and letting it pull us apart.
Yeah, I think that applies to so many areas of our marriage, right? And so I think that can apply so many different places. I love that so much. And we talked a little bit about this earlier in the episode, but I know, many of our listeners do have children. Many of them do not. We talked about, my husband and I, we do not have children yet. And this is probably more of a selfish Rebecca question than anything. I'm wondering if you were to sit down with one of your kids that doesn't have children yet, or you were to sit down and counsel a couple who wants children one day, but they're not in that season yet, what would you say? And you've given so much advice already, but what would you say if you were asked, get this right or work on this before you go down that road? What would be maybe some of those things?
Well, again, it's going to sound like very cliche advice from a pastor, but again, sometimes cliches are cliches because they're true.
Yeah.
Every couple discovered the need to be spiritually strong. Because there are a time when you're having kids, or you have a medical issue, or you're too busy, when your spouse may not notice you. Your spouse may not appreciate you. Your spouse may not understand you. But here's the thing, God notices. God understands. God hears. And there's going to be a point in your marriage when you really need to lean on that. And I just found the best gift I can give to my wife is to be a passionate follower and worshiper of Jesus Christ. What I receive from my Heavenly Father, then I'm able to give to her. If I scrimp on that, if I get slack in that, if I get slack on that, I just demand more of her instead of being able to give to her. So I think you've got to double down on that. I think second, you got to give grace to each other. I tell couples, resent the situation, not each other. I just got to spend 5 days with my son and his wife and their 2 kids, and I just reminded how exhausting it is. So, Rebecca, catch up on your sleep now. If you get pregnant, it's hard to sleep when you're pregnant. But then when you have kids, I just noticed because they got together because there was a friend of my daughter-in-law's was having a destination wedding in Vail, which is a wonderful place to do a destination wedding. So they want to go out, and they're with the couples, and so they probably get home 11:15, 11:30, which is fine because Lisa and I were there to watch their kids. But that doesn't mean the kids sleep in. They're going to pay for it when the kids get up early. And I just remember, man, you're just, when you're existing without a lot of sleep, and that's why I say sink your roots deep before you have kids so that you understand each other, you appreciate each other, you get each other, you know each other, because it is testing your marriage on a whole lot of levels. And then I would say if you get to the pregnant stage and you're getting close to where you're about to give kids, figure out what you can remove from your life. Too many couples just say, okay, we're going to add a baby and everything's going to be fine. Yeah, right. Seriously. I know you laugh at it now, but couples, they just think that. Yeah, we don't have to take anything out. We're just going to do what we did. I'm like, you can't. You aren't given 10 more hours a day when you become a parent. You have the same amount of hours and twice the responsibilities. And I remember talking with a younger couple, ambitious, and I don't mean that in a negative sense, but she was frustrated because he wasn't earning enough, even though he was earning $180,000 a year. But she earns over $300,000, is successful in real estate and whatnot. And they were having a hard time connecting, and they had 2 kids. But for her to earn her over $300,000 a year, she was working about 65 hours a week, because a lot of times real estate, all the weekends are gone. And then because they wanted to connect with the kids, they were never really home together. They were only in bed together 4 or 5 hours a night. So how do we fix our marriage? I said, how much do you need to live on? Because $550,000 sounds like a lot to me. Well, we need that in our neighborhood. That's about what you need. And I said, well, I can't help you. I don't know how you can keep a marriage together with 2 young kids when you're working 60 hours a week, he's working 50, you're only in bed for about 4 hours a night together, and you're not really having... I go, if you don't take something out in 5 years, I'm not sure that you'll have a marriage. And that sounds severe, but the couples I talked to that survived through childhood and thrived made some really tough choices because they said, regardless of what happens, whether we drive older cars or what, we want to come out of this more united as a couple. The best gift we can give to our kids is for mommy and daddy to love each other and to be affectionate toward each other. And you just can't do that if you're running a schedule that isn't conducive to building intimacy.
Yeah, that's so good. That one probably hits home the most for me because I wouldn't say I'm ambitious in a financial sense like that couple seem to be, but in terms of just being ambitious, when I think about having children, that is one of the things that I think about a lot. Is I know that will totally flip our lives upside down, and so you have to make changes in order to move into that. So
yeah, and I know he's like, let me give an example because she does what you do. Megyn Kelly, who was big on Fox News, she went to NBC, now does her own podcast. She was offered a truckload of money at Fox News, but her kids were, I think, 7, 5, and 2, something like that. I don't know, wow. But they were still young, and she realized if I do an evening show, they're going to grow up without me. And that's why she did the morning show with NBC. And then, the other things led to her leaving there. And then now she can do the podcast after the kids go to school. She has her home office. She does her podcast. Over 500,000 listeners, which sounds like a ton to me.
That's incredible.
But she just decided, I'm going to make a choice. She was at the pinnacle of the world. So many women would, they claw to get what she had, an evening show that was leading cable news, but for her, it wasn't worth it. But here's the thing, she found a way to make it work, but she had to make some courageous choices. She had to give up the prestige of having a different thing, and it's worked out for her. And I'm sure for a lot of women, it hasn't worked out. I don't mean to paint an overly rosy story, but she'll certainly tell you she has no regrets over making that choice. And what I love when I listen to her, I mean, she's just deeply in love with her husband as well. And so she's found a way to make her marriage work and her parenting work, and she has a dog. So
that's
2
incredible.
dogs. So you can do it, but I'll go back to what I began with. What are you going to take out to do it?
Yeah.
I talked to an eye surgeon. Who you think? I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and God is so sovereign over all those details. Yeah. I think sometimes when we, I don't know, have a hard time releasing our grasp on something, I just have to remind myself, like, if God is leading this direction, he is so able to provide and sustain our family in that.
Well, what I was going to say is one of the couples I talked to that when they added kids, he's an eye surgeon, so you think he is pretty well, but he's decided to work 3 days a week. And his office is 5 minutes from his home so that he could have lunch with his family. He goes, I'm driving older cars, even though I'm a surgeon. He goes, but Gary, if you knew the connection I have with my wife, Deborah, he goes, I don't care. I got an email from a guy who just, it's a position where he took so much less money. And he goes, you know what? Money is so overrated. If you're in a place that's a good fit and you're connecting with your spouse, you don't need as much. Now, look, money does make life easier on certain things. But when I was talking about this younger couple where they have to have so much just to get by and they already know we're not making it, trying harder won't make you make it. At some point, you've got to realize this isn't doable, so let's in humility recognize what can we do to stay connected. I do think every one of you, if they're listening to your podcast, their hope is 40 years from now, they will look back and say, I had a really rich marriage. I followed God. I was true to what the Lord called me to do. And if they feel like they were using their gifts as God created them to do, and then they were married, and then if they were parents, that they were, I really think everyone says, yeah, that's what I want. If that's what you want 40 years from now, make the choices today so that you can look back and say, okay, that's how I prioritize my time.
That's so good. Make those choices today. I love that. Well, before we wrap the conversation up, there's a question that I ask all of my guests, and I'm so excited to ask you, Gary. The podcast is called Radical Radiance, with a heart to help women see how they can radiate the heart of Christ in all that they do. And so the question I love asking is, what about Jesus makes you radiant?
Yeah. it's really difficult for me as a guy to call myself radiant in any way. They get, with no hair and all. But here's the deal. And it's funny because I was just with my granddaughter, and she's fascinated with my bald head. She goes to my wife, his hair falled out. And she keeps asking me, she's in that, why?
How old is she?
She's 3. And so she's just fascinated, like, how did this happen? Anyway. But to answer your question, where I've been so worshiping Jesus lately is his brilliance, the brilliance of his mind. We often think of the love of Jesus and the miracles of Jesus and the sacrifice of Jesus and the power of Jesus. But just remembering there has been no more brilliant teacher and thinker than Jesus. And it grieved me. I looked on Google, the world's best thinkers, the world's best intellectuals. None of them mentioned Jesus. I think, what do you talk? Nobody taught like Jesus taught. And when he was 12 years old, the Bible says people were astonished at his wisdom and understanding. When he was an adult, the Bible says they were mesmerized by his teaching. We've never heard anything like that. And I think as Christians, we so often focus on what Jesus did, which is appropriate and beautiful and glorious. And we kind of forget what he said. He was just this brilliant man. And so just doubling down on studying the words of Jesus, studying those who write about Christ, trying to grow my mind, realizing that ultimately, as Christians, we should pursue that kind of brilliance and insight. Paul says we have the mind of Christ. And I may just have a tiny little sliver, but I want to do 100% of the 1% that I can experience.
I love that. That's so good. Well, Gary, I am so thankful for you, and I just can't wait for our listeners to go grab a copy of Making Your Marriage a Fortress. I just know they're going to love this conversation, and so thank you so much for being my guest for the 3rd time again today.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. Look, I was blown away by the wisdom of these couples. I took away some things I will never forget, and I'm just eager to share these friends with others so that they can get to know them well. That God is doing so many good things in quiet lives that nobody will ever hear about, and I just felt blessed that I got to meet them.